Okay, good evening o good morning po everyone. Tayo po ay nasa palatuntunan pa rin ng tuklasin natin at ito po ang inyong lingkod, Cathy Cruz, na inyong makakasama sa loob po ng isang oras. Well, sa ating mga issue po ng bayan ay napakarami pong mga dapat tutukan. Pero isa po sa mga dapat nating tutukan ay ang issue po ng usaping kapayapaan at digmaan, hindi lamang dito sa ating bansa, maging sa ibayong dagat. Of course, ngayon, minarapat pong kapanayamin ng inyong lingkod ang isang sabihin na nating war survivor. Talagang this is a real life story po na kanya pong ihahandog po sa atin. At isang karangalan po ng palatuntunang tuklasin natin na makasama ang isang katulad niya. May tuturing kung siya ay isang bayani na rin dahil hindi po biro ang kanya pong dinaanan. Hayaan po ninyong pakinggan po ang ating panayam sa kanya at hayaan po ninyong ang kanyang kasaysayan, ang buhay kasaysayan ay maging aral po sa ating lahat. Okay, magandang hapon po sa inyo, ma'am. Pwede pong pakibanggit po ang buong pangalan at nickname po o palayaw po na mas kilala po kayo.
Ako si Dr. Azucena Conrado Clemente Ocampo. Ako ay ipinanganak noong 1937 May dito sa Los Baños. But then, nang ako ay nagkamalay, ako ay alam ko na nakatira kami sa Manila. Sa Felix Huertas. At doon ako lumaki hanggang sa dumating ang panahon na naging magulo sa Manila kasi gawa ng dumating daw ang Hapon. And malapit kami sa Quiapo, kaya parang yun ang sentro ng kaguluhan ng Hapon. So my dad decided that we transfer to Los Baños because he thought that it would be more peaceful here. So he took us home to here in Los Baños. And we lived just across the churchyard and the town proper. So while growing in Los Baños, we saw the Japanese came and they occupied the church, which is just across our house. And as children, we would just sit on the windowsill, and look out while watching the Japanese do things like they dug holes in the churchyard, and they put sacks of sand, and then we would watch them with fixed bayonets run towards the sand, the sacks filled with sand, and with an eerie sound, they would press their bayonet on that sack. Little did I know that that will be what will happen to us. Almost every day that we were there, that is their exercise in the morning. And then on the other side of our house is the school. And that is also the place where they stayed. And every morning they would say their sing their national anthem. And below our house is a big house, is their granary. They put all their food, supplies, and everything, and they have an office in the lower part of the house of my grandmother. And my dad, I seldom see my dad, but I was always with my cousins, my aunties, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my mom. I didn't know that my father was a guerrilla. And there was a time when they started they had this sauna. And they get all the men in the town, and they were kept in the church. And I remember that the only person that we could see going around Los Baños is my uncle, the doctor. He was not kept in the church. He was not, I don't know how they call it, part of the sauna, because he was a doctor. So when things were getting a bit worse, my aunties and my lola went with the guerrillas, and they hid in the mountains in Mount Makiling. But my family, my dad, took us to the next barrio, which is Anos, because that is where his family stays. So we were staying in one of the houses of my grandmother on my father's side, until we had a very happy family. Even when we were in Manila, we go around church, and after church we go around for picnics. So we were happy in that small area in that town. It's before you go to UP those times, because there were less Japanese soldiers there. They were concentrated in the first place that we came from, near the church. But then, one time, I noticed that I seldom see my father too. I can only see him when he comes home at night. I remember that there is a certain kind of whistle, and then my mom would get up and go out. And I remember that I'm very inquisitive. So when I hear that whistle, I'll try to go out and see. But my mom would say, stay there. But I will still try to see what's happening. And then I saw that it was the whistle of my father, who comes home late at night just to see us. And I noticed one thing, that he would, while getting up the stairs, he would reach up. And I was so curious about it. But then every time he comes home, it's always that way. And my mom didn't know that I knew that I'm peeping. Then there was a time that it took some time that I missed my father. He didn't come anymore. Then, after some time, one afternoon when we were having our snack, my grandmother boiled some corn, and we were about to take our snack of boiled corn when the Japanese came, and they pushed us out of the house. And then when we were out in the road, we saw that there are so many people there, and they were all lined up towards a place, and we were told to go there and join them. So napasama kami doon sa grupo, and we ended up in the house of another relative, a grandfather. It was a big, tall house. So we were told to go up the house and sit on the floor. I noticed that the house is filled up with people, with children, women, the old, and the young. But the men were all tied up to the post of the house downstairs. So we were up on the upper house. While there, I noticed that the Japanese came up and they told us to all keep quiet because everybody were praying so loud and crying, and the children were crying. I was with my brother and two brothers and one baby sister, my grandmother and my mother. So we were placed in a group together with all the women and the children there. And my grandmother and my mother tried to cover us with their bodies because I remember I couldn't move. And then suddenly there was this frightening sound that they used to make when they thrust their bayonets in the sacks with sand. And that is what they're doing. They're thrusting their bayonets and the people all around us. And then probably I lost consciousness or what. Nung nagising ako, when I gained consciousness, I couldn't move because of the weight of my mom, my grandmother. They were all on top of us, my brother, Bert, the younger one, Ben, and the baby girl. My mom and my grandmother were on top of us, and I couldn't move. Then I heard a cry. My brother was crying, and my sister was crying. I tried to reach for them to calm them down. I couldn't. Probably they were crying because of pain or hunger. And then I heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. And I saw the Japanese again with his bayonet. And he took my brother and threw him in the air. And with the bayonets fixed, pointing up, my brother landed on the bayonet. And since I couldn't stop them from crying, my baby sister was still crying, so he took my baby sister and did the same. And I saw that he landed in the sharp pointed bayonets of the Japanese. So probably I lost consciousness, or I don't know anything anymore after that. And then what I usually hear are sounds, heavy sounds. And I said, when I was asked when I was after the war, I kitchen and everywhere else. And the only sounds that I can hear are the sounds of thunder and lightning. Every time it was thunder and lightning. And I was corrected that that was not thunder and lightning because it was not the rainy season. So I don't know how long I felt, I knew that I was alone by myself until I remembered that my mom told me something before everything happened. She said, look at this. She had what do you call that? Binder. She had a binder. She let me look at it and she said, should anything happen, don't forget to get this. No matter what, get it and take it with you. And then I also felt that my grandmother moved. Then when I tried to get the binder, no matter how I tried, I couldn't lift it because it was as if it has been pasted or what, but it was blood, dried blood on top of it, made it stick to her skin. And when I tried to remove the binder, I would be taking off her skin. So I pity her. I didn't want her to suffer. I didn't know that she was dead. I didn't want her to be hurt. So I just left it. So I left it like that. And then I heard my grandmother, she said, come, let's get out of here. So, and she took me towards the kitchen. And then we found another cousin of us, a boy, a bit older than me. So there were now 3 of us. Like another cousin, my grandmother and I. We went to the kitchen, and before going down, she said, let's take a snack. Let's eat. Are you hungry? I said, yes. Let's eat. And she handed us corn. The corn that they had been preparing before everything happened. But I noticed something about the corn. But I didn't know that. When you hold the corn, there are strings, fine strings. But we ate it. We're hungry, and we don't know if that's spoiled or what. And I don't know how many days we have been in that house. So we went down the stairs. And then when we reached the ground, I saw my aunt, the younger sister of my father, lying on the ground with no clothes on, dead. And then farther on, there are so many dead people all around. And I saw another aunt, my aunt, the youngest sister of my father, in the same position, in the same condition. So, following my grandmother, she took us to the boat house. There I saw the houseboy of my father. And I noticed that he was holding on to his side, pushing something in. So I thought that's just nothing. But every time he moves, he does that. And I noticed that that's also how my grandmother walks. She's walking, limping, holding on to something here and pushing it back, not knowing later on that it was her innards, the intestines were flowing out because she has a big wound on the stomach. And boy gave us something to drink, and he he bundled some clothes and told me and my cousin to cross the road and then follow the railroad. And my mother and my grandmother bid us goodbye, not knowing that that was the last time that I'll see her. She died there in the poultry house. And then after the boy gave us instructions, we went out of the poultry house, crossed the road, and followed the railroad that was towards town proper. While walking in the railroad, we saw a group of Japanese. You can easily know that they are the Japanese soldiers because they have a flap at the back. So they were there just beside the railroad. And we just passed through. We just look and did nothing. And I was praying all the time that nothing will happen to us. Because I grew up with my grandmother beside the church and we always pray. Especially when the Japanese came, the church became our playground. Everybody was there and the children, all the children were there. We didn't know about these things. We were happy playing and we always pray and sing praises. So I was praying all the time that they will not see us. God was answered prayer. We just passed through and didn't do anything. When we reached the town, the crossroad, where the main road of the town crosses the railroad, we met some people who knew me, and he said he's taking me home. And my cousin